Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the final talk of the concurrent sessions here in the Gold Coast room. So next up, we've got Mr. Andrew Collins with When Technology Attacks, which I'm sure is going to be chilling and horrifying. So please make him feel welcome.
Thank you. Hopefully it's not horrifying, and being the last concurrent session, I also hope it's a little bit of fun for what is a fairly serious topic. So what we'll be talking about today is technology in the context of domestic violence. So it's where a perpetrator lives with a partner or has lived with a partner and has often set up their IT. It changes the security paradigm that that user is experiencing. And what we found is that ordinary technologies can be reused by the perpetrator, and the typical security controls that we recommend as security professionals start to fall apart. Like MFA fails for facial recognition when the perpetrator lives with you and he can simply hold the phone up to your face when you're asleep to log into the device. So, first bit is this presentation comes with a warning. What I'll be talking about is real use cases with survivors of domestic violence. They have been anonymised to protect the victim survivor. They've also been anonymised to protect the perpetrator, because we don't want to give away their IDs. But they are real examples. So if you find this triggering, just remember there is a counsellor available. If you need to leave, please feel free to leave. Just go, walk out. You won't offend me. If you get up and walk out going, "You suck," that may offend. But if you need to leave, just leave. The other thing, and thankfully, we've now got a chief chocolate hander outerer. It saves me throwing, which is always a good thing in terms of safety. So I love interactive presentations, and I'm going to run around. We've got two mobile phones. If you could have a look at those mobile phones and pass them around. Try to give everyone an opportunity. On the right-hand side is a Samsung Android phone. On the left-hand side is the iPhone. It's a bit of a competition. Each of those phones has been compromised in 3 separate ways. They're pretty typical of what we see working every day with survivors of domestic violence. The chocolates are on offer. Tell me how they're hacked. And we'll cover that at the end of the presentation. So a little bit of a gratuitous plug for ourselves. I'm the co-founder of Nansen Forensics. We work particularly in the domestic violence space. So we detect technology abuse for survivors of domestic violence, elder abuse cases, carer abuse cases, people with multiple languages. We do a lot of different cases. It's always involving some form of violence where technology is a component. We work with something like 54, 55 domestic violence agencies and other agencies around Australia, including UN Women, Salvation Army, Uniting Care, Benevolent Society. If you can name it, we work with them. We operate a technology abuse lab, and the 2 phones actually come out of our lab, which is why they've got a little sticker on the back of them. And that's now in partnership with the University of Canberra to formalise how we detect this type of abuse. We've, funny enough, being called a forensics company, also did do digital extraction and expert witness reports, and we also develop technology, which is where a lot of this presentation has come out of. So this gets us to the dual-use dilemma. It's where technology is designed for legitimate purposes and has been reused by perpetrators, leveraging the close access that they have to do something malicious. And examples would be location sharing. It's very, very handy if you have kids and you're trying to track them. It's like herding cats, but a bit harder. When a perpetrator weaponises it, it allows them to know the location of the victim survivor. And we've had victim survivors chased down to refuges where the perpetrators turned up at a refuge. We've had them with IVOs in place turning up at the kids' football games at locations where they shouldn't know where the victim survivor will be. They try to insert themselves into it. Sharing of accounts. So family sharing services with Apple or Google, or simply sharing the account itself, the same login, results in the perpetrator having access to pretty much everything in that account, including backups, and allows them to monitor and control and potentially manipulate what the victim survivor is experiencing with their digital devices. Backups. I can remember when I started my IT career far too long ago, we talk about backups and the need to back up. Backups these days are largely automatic from your phone into either a Samsung account or a Google account or an iCloud account. If the perpetrator's got access to that account, it allows them to basically get access to everything on your device. And multi-factor authentication and shared secrets. So if the perpetrator can hold the phone up to your face when you're asleep, facial recognition fails. I've been married for 17 years. I know my wife's PIN, she knows my PIN numbers. I know her passwords, she knows mine. I know all of her secret questions that are pretty typical. That is normal for a relationship. So the standard security controls we issue as professionals start to fail when an intimate partner is involved as the perpetrator rather than a stranger. Went slightly too quick. It's a little bit of a fun photo. I'll talk about that in a sec. But things like Find My. Now, Find My is part of the iCloud service that allows you to find your iPhone. It is an awesome feature. I used it when my wife lost her phone, and it located it exactly where it said it was, inside a building. Awesome if you lose your phone. But where the perpetrator has access to the iCloud account or has connected a device previously, they're able to also track the victim survivor. And something we've found with iCloud and the Find My services, they don't actually integrate all that well, so that if you remove the perpetrator out of the iCloud account, they remain in the Find My service. So what we find is that the perpetrator can still track, or devices will be in the Find My service that aren't actually connected to the rest of the account because they've been shared or hooked up via Bluetooth at some point in the past. It seems to be a service designed to maximise connectivity and sharing, which can be maximised for abuse. Our fun photo, it's an AI image, but it looks like a lovely cosy house with a robot vacuum cleaner doing its job. What's happening potentially in this shot, and we found it one of these in December last year, was the perpetrator had set up the robot vacuum cleaner. They'd used the standard app to set it up. And the vacuum cleaner did its thing. It cleaned the house. It was awesome. I wish I had one. But the perpetrator was also an interstate truckie. And what would happen is he would go away for a week at a time. And that robot's behaviour would change when he was away. And it started following the victim survivor around the house. And what was happening was that robot is designed, it was a good one, to vacuum in the house, map it out, vacuum the house. If you get stuck, send an alert. And if someone's getting an alert, they need a camera to see where it's stuck. They need a way of interacting with the world, a microphone and speaker, and they need it to be remotely steerable. And that's what he had. He basically had turned a vacuum cleaner into a mobile spy camera. Okay, in terms of cloud accounts, they give you access to photos, messages, search history. It gives the perpetrator the ability to control and to know what is occurring with the victim survivor. This is something we see a lot of with digital lockouts. It's Google, for example. I want to spread this out a bit. Google will allow the perpetrator to log into the account, change the password, push that new password to the victim survivor's device without their being aware of it. So what it allows the perpetrator to do is to lock the account so the victim survivor can't get access to it, but to continue to be able to use it using his password that's been loaded into her email client or Gmail app. Can be a challenge to recover those, but they are recoverable with a lot of help. But it shows that technology that's been designed to simplify, to share the password that's just been changed to all devices, can be used by someone maliciously. Social media, I'm going to share some absolutely shocking social media stuff shortly, but it allows abusers to basically engage with the victim survivor's social network to manipulate and control. And I was talking to someone yesterday, in fact, where the perpetrator was in their social media account and was sending hate messages to all her friends. And it was only when she saw those people in real life that they say, "Why did you send that to me?" And she realised all these messages, she hadn't actually sent any of them, but it had started to disconnect a lot of her online social network, and she didn't know why at the time. And of course, connectivity like the Find My service and other services that allow easy interaction and seamless sort of coordination are also something that the perpetrators could control. So, first chocolate question. We'll hand out a couple of these. How common is tech abuse? How many people, what sort of percentage of the Australian population will experience tech abuse in their lifetime? Yeah. 1 in 3. That's a very good answer. It's close. Yep. You can hand out the chocolates to anyone who answers. Absolutely dead on. It's actually, well, 51% in Australia, but close enough. So it's 1 in 2 people in Australia will experience tech abuse. So half the room. Sorry for this side of the room. If you're Indigenous, that goes up into the 70% range. If you're LGBTQI, it's in high 60%. If you're female, it is in the low 60%. If you're from if you speak a different language to English, so part of the CALD community, you're in the 70% region. The odds go up. We've seen those figures then translated all around the world. New Zealand, it is 54%. A number of Pacific islands, it is 60%. The US is 40%. I don't think they can count. TFA can continue for years. Our record is 11 years. The perpetrator and the victim survivor had separated. They had divorced. He had formed a new relationship. He had married. He had a child with the new partner. Yet he was continuing to abuse the victim survivor to the point where her mother died. And she started leaning very heavily on her father for support. So he compromised the father as well. There was no gain for him. It was simply control. 97% of DV caseworkers say they see tech abuse all the time. I worry about the other 3%. And technology abuse is often not detected, missed completely, or simply ignored. Within the domestic violence community, there is a standard risk assessment with someone walking into a DV centre. It does not consider technology at all. There's not a single technology question in Queensland, New South Wales or Victoria, which means that tech abuse often goes misdiagnosed or missed altogether. There were also a number of companies getting around Australia at one point charging $2,000 to do a virus scan. They went 10 years without detecting a thing, which is statistically impossible given the prevalence of it. So, some real-world victim experiences, and there's a few of these. I added this early this morning. So, in terms of Sarah's story, so Sarah's ex-partner had set up the security systems in her phone, which was pretty typical, and he was able to monitor her after the relationship had ended. That is a screenshot of her iCloud subscription services. Now, he had committed a credit card fraud, so she'd cancelled the credit card, which is why they'd moved into inactive, or they'd expired. Anyone like to guess what the compromise there is? Yep. Sorry? Yes, both of them. Did you? Yeah. There's actually 4 of them here. First one, Swan Security. Perfectly legitimate app, it's a good camera, but the perpetrator had installed them in the bedroom. Bedroom, living room, kitchen. There was actually nothing pointing outside. They were going to a cloud console. He could access the cloud console remotely, even though they weren't living together again. Life360, it's a remarkably common family sharing tracking app where parents can track the kids and vice versa. In this case, it had been installed without her knowledge. Tile is another tracking bit of hardware, lovely little white thing, came a little bit before the AirTag. He glued that to underneath the tow ball of her car. And Truecaller, this was the first time we saw it, where he changed the voicemail number of her phone. So when she didn't answer a phone call, it went to him. This one's a little bit more disturbing. This is Claire. Again, I've changed the names for all of this. Claire's partner, or ex-partner, they were separated, had children together. They'd done a standard custody visit. The kids had taken their iPads, which were connected via family sharing to the victim survivor's iPad and phone. When he returned the kids, he didn't return the iPads. And what was happening was all those blue dots, which I've censored, were popping up on her video feed. So these were coming up as screensaver images because of the way her phone was set up. And what they were was him using the child's iPad to video and photograph himself having sex with prostitutes so that they would appear on her device. In terms of Jamie's case, her ex-partner set up all their IT, but she struggled. She was in Bendigo from memory. She couldn't find a DV agency. When she reached out to us, she told us there is no DV agency in any 300 kilometres of Bendigo, which was weird because we'd been there 2 days before doing training. So when we looked at her device, we found developer options were turned on, install from unknown apps was turned on, Google Play Protector was turned off. These are all alarm bells. And then we found the spyware. He'd installed spyware on her device, and it was filtering search results from Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, so that DV support agencies in the region didn't appear there. So we actually bought some of this stuff because we have 74 copies of spyware now, ran it up and made Victoria Police disappear from Google search results. It works incredibly well, but it demonstrates how technology can alter someone's reality. We have a habit of just trusting Google search results, and this demonstrates very clearly that a perpetrator with enough access can change that very reality. For this one, this was Taylor. The perpetrator knew intimate details, like he knew her own thoughts. And what we found was he was sharing photos, so he had location via geotagging, including the location of the DV centre she was in, or the refuge she was in, and he was sharing notes, the notes application in on the Apple iPhone. Inside that notes application, she was using it as her personal diary. She's keeping all of her intimate thoughts in there, and he'd set up a sharing rule, so it went to him. It was a little bit easier. In this one that's a Google account, he set himself up using her device, logged himself in, changed the password, set himself up as a recovery. She's using his password to now log into the account. We managed to recover that account using a password reset and get him out. This is this is Hotmail. So Hotmail doesn't support IMAP protocol by default. It had been turned on by the perpetrator, which gave him access to all the victim survivors' email. He'd also gotten very cheeky, or dumb, whichever way you want to put it. He'd set the default from address to be his email address. So unless she remembered to change the from email address when she was sending an email, he got the reply. And with that, he'd been able to wreak absolute havoc in her life. He'd cancelled her lease, he'd cancelled her solicitors, he'd sent quite a few disruptive emails. Passkeys. Again, a great example of security that generally works very well when the attacker is a stranger. So passkey with Windows Hello is a biometric and something you have, something you are, something you have. Normally a great thing, except the victim survivor had a Mac. This was the perpetrator who'd set it up to give him access to her account. This one is disturbing. So the perpetrator was in the victim survivor's Facebook. He had added her to webcam groups. And basically she was receiving a large number of unsolicited messages, which were all quite frankly pornographic. That's why the pictures are being filtered. He was then using this as evidence of her infidelity in the relationship. And last one, it's not all not all digital or virtual, or whatever you want to call it. This is a physical bug where a Raspberry Pi, this is an ESP32 or an Arduino, is then repurposed to be a listening device. This particular one had a little microphone. It was being powered by a USB connection into a smart speaker thingy in the living room. Every time it heard a noise, it would record the conversation, encode it as MP4, use the home Wi-Fi to then email it to him. So, summing up the security components, multi-factor authentication generally fails where tech abuse is involved. When the partner has intimate knowledge of the individual, security questions also fail, as do PINs and passwords. Spyware tracking, actual spyware is quite rare, but tracking apps are incredibly common and becoming normalised in society. So, particularly Gen Z or millennials, in a relationship, it's now considered normal for partners to track each other. That does not bode well for the future. And of course, malicious repurposing, which is the vast majority of what we see, where legitimate services and apps and hardware are used in illegitimate ways. It also points to the fundamental problem of detecting this. How do you detect it when it's a legitimate app? Because virus scanners are certainly not going to pick it up. So this gets down to the positive part of the presentation. How do we design as a security industry to work around this? And our thoughts, anyway, are around privacy controls. Make it quick and easy to access and revoke, change and revoke settings around access to the device. Right now on both the Android devices and the Apple devices, it's buried away in menus. When we go through doing digital safety audits with victim survivors, it is often the first time they've ever seen it. Be transparent around what tracking and what sharing is going on. Take a user-centred security approach with vulnerable users in mind. Given the percentage of people who experience this in their lifetime, design for this use case, not just where the attacker's a stranger, and simply recognise that technology can be weaponised. So, sorry, did you want some photos of that? Cool. So, practical sort of stuff, and this is not exhaustive. Emergency access reset. So allow the victim survivor or any user to revoke access at any point they want. It should be a single button. Have a private mode which turns off location tracking without disabling the phone. I mean, airplane mode will do it, but you also disable a lot of the phone's features. Create abuse-aware authentication, and I don't know the answer to this one. We're currently playing around with MFA that has a second stage that goes out to a trusted party when a password is being changed, but maybe facial recognition where it tests are her eyes open when you're logging in, stuff like that. And of course, clear access indicators. So prominently display what information is being shared from the device. Right now, it is buried. Up until iOS 17, it was buried very deep and it was incredibly hard to find. At least Apple's made it a little bit easier, where you go settings, privacy and security, privacy checkup, check privacy controls, OK, continue, and then it'll tell you. So in other words, it's buried deep. It should be right on the surface. So in summary, before we get to the more chocolates, technology should empower. We live in an incredibly privileged position where we have the sum of all human knowledge in our pockets on a mobile phone, and AI is to interpret it for us and probably explain some of it. But for a lot of people in society, the things that we take for granted and use every day are also a weapon. that can control, can manipulate to change their very reality, and in some case absolutely terrorise. So hopefully together we can build a safer set of digital tools for the world. So now the real questions, and time for chocolates. You'll have to be loud. How are those phones hacked? Yep, we got one just there.
I was one MFA,
On which one did you have this?
Android.
Sorry? You had the Android? No, the MFA was fine. Yep.
I spotted a few things. I'll give you one though. The passwords were visible.
Sorry?
On the Android. There was a setting to make passwords visible on the Android.
Yep, that was simply to make it easier to use. Yeah, but good answer.
It's got Find My Phone enabled.
That's enabled by default. But again, good answer.
Update services.
No.
No?
Oh,
It's called
Wait.
update service SMS.
I'm going to click ahead. Yes, it is. Well done. That's actually the main one.
There was a screen recorder in there as well.
Yes,
There were 3 apps that were on the second page of apps, and I can't remember the other one, but I do remember the screen recorder one.
Yeah, I'd actually installed the screen recorder and another app, which is the, I think, Wallet to You, because we use that phone for a demonstration with the UN around interagency intelligence sharing in a multi-jurisdictional environment. And my business partner and I were arranging a drug deal using those. Obviously not a real one, but we gave it as a demonstration in Singapore.
The Samsung remote control service was turned on. Which, no? It was it by the time I got it.
Yeah, but good answer. One down here again. You just want the chocolates.
Was there a trusted root certificate installed?
No.
Okay.
Good guess. So I will say we've done the demonstrations with the phones at a number of conferences. One of them was another security conference. Currently you're tied in terms of detections. One other person got the update service down in Melbourne. No DV agency client or agency staff member has ever detected any of these. So you're already better than the population. So I'll walk through the Android phone, then we'll jump to the Apple phone. So developer options are turned on. It's not a problem, but it is an indicator of compromise. To turn developer options on, you go settings, about phone, find the build number, click it 8 times, click yes. It's not an accident. As you correctly said, update services. Update services was the app installed by that particular spyware. It was called MSpy. MSpy is the most popular spyware on the planet. Now, this will do your head in. They have 2.5 million users. Every one of them has paid $100 US minimum. Do the maths. That's a very wealthy company. It's actually run out of Ukraine. I don't think they're funding the war effort. But for every type of spyware out there, and we've come across 74 and there are more of them, they change the name of the app, the size of it, the logo. It changes constantly. It's constantly being updated. Makes it very hard to detect. For update services on a Samsung phone, it shouldn't be there. Good pick. If it was an Oppo phone, that's a default app. And last one, a really hard one to get, is Samsung Knox. So Knox is a Samsung security suite. It is standard on most Android phones. This one has 3 modules underneath it. It's an indicator on that model of phone, which is an A05, that a mobile device manager from Samsung Knox has been installed on the device, but then I pulled it out. So it wasn't as obvious. It's a deliberately hard one, that one, But if I saw free modules on a S21 model, no problem. If I saw free modules on an S25, problem, because it should have 5. So over to this side of the room, can you do better than 1?
It had Cydia, so it looks like it's jailbroken.
Bingo. That was the Cydia app. So now we're at 2. You're now the smartest IT security professionals in Australia. Congratulations. Anyone like to guess at the other 2? The Apple side's terrified. You do get chocolates regardless if you're right or wrong. Yep. No,
Find My Phone would obviously be switched on,
Yep.
and I haven't seen it, so I'm just guessing.
yep. No, Find My Phone is on by default. Yep. Are we out of chocolates?
We've got a bag left.
Okay.
It had the developer tools as well installed. And
No.
No.
Bingo. We're now at 3. Yeah, jailbroken on the Apple device, yes. We hadn't had jailbroken, it was Cydia app, but to install Cydia, we had to jailbreak the phone. It's actually not necessary now. With European security reg changes around antitrust, Apple had to open up the App Store. So now you can just download spyware directly. You don't have to go through jailbreaking and installation of the side loader. But when I did that phone, it was an old one. Anyone else? I'm going to be on a sugar rush tonight then. Sharing was turned on. It was sharing the Notes application, or some of them, with the Nansen malware, one of our email addresses. And if you looked inside the Notes application, it said super secret personal stuff or something like that. FamiGuard, family tracking app, was also installed. And as you correctly pointed out, Cydia, which is a side loader, it's an alternative app store. For that one, when I built that phone, we had to jailbreak it. It's now not necessary. Now for the last and very concerning slide. I ran antivirus scanners against it to see how they do. There's all of these promise to detect this sort of stuff. This one, and I've filtered out the names of them because I don't want to get sued, all good. No problems. Ran this one up. No problems, you're all good, and your iOS version is up to date. It's version 16, the world is up to version 18. And this is all good, you've got iOS version is up to date, you're not jailbroken. It failed to detect the jailbroke, but it did flag that I wasn't running their premium product. So,
It would only be flagging that that's the max upgrade software that it can support, though. So
sorry?
wouldn't it be matching just the maximum upgrade of its software
No,
support?
that one should still be able to be upgraded to around 17. Yeah. We've deliberately held that one back because I actually don't want to break everything that I've installed on it. But there are actually quite a lot of updates pending for it. We just deliberately use it this way. But the reason I do this slide is to just highlight that detecting tech abuse is hard. It's why we run the lab. It's why that one company that was getting around for 10 odd years, they were actually running the scanner in the middle that was part of a forensics toolkit. So they hook up Celebrite gear, it would do a scan with this one in the middle, and it would come back a negative and they go, you're clear. And that's why they were failing to detect, because it's impossible for these tools to detect it, because they are often legitimate tools being used in illegitimate ways. So we have 45 seconds remaining in the end of the day. Does anyone have any questions? Yep.
So those ones weren't really great at detecting things. Are there some that you would trust?
Absolutely not. We were asked actually by Wesnet, who is the peak educator in the DV tech abuse space in Australia, to evaluate one that was being pushed by the Coalition Against Stalkerware globally. And the report from me was damning. Basically, it was acting as a man-in-the-middle intercept attack. It wouldn't be able to see any encrypted traffic. It was relying on detecting going out to a malicious site, but the vast majority just go to iCloud and Google. There is work going on with us and UC at the moment to build a tool to do this, but it is ferociously complicated. I don't know if we'll be successful, but right now there's absolutely zero in the market. It's a manual effort. You'll get there eventually.
Just going back to what you were saying earlier, that the DV services don't really, consider any of this stuff. I suppose, like I'd hope everyone in the room, this type of thing is not what I would want going on to someone that I know or anything like that. I guess, what would your message be then as far as what the expectation is for people to do? Should the security professionals in this room perhaps be talking to their own circles and saying, hey, we know DV is not really up to this stuff. If you're ever in this situation, or, as someone connected to you is in this situation, I'm happy to at least cast an eye across it to try and knock out the stuff I know about. I don't know. Or is there somewhere that we can refer victim survivors to?
Basically, we wrote up a risk assessment that we're hoping to have standardised. It's around a lot of DV agencies now, but it's not part of the official process. So what we see, because it's not part of the official process, some use it, some don't. The ones that use it, it's a high 90% detection rate. Those that don't, we rarely see come in, which is frustrating. It needs to be part of the standard manual. So it's actually a government decision in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and other states to actually start considering tech abuse as a component of the risk profile of an individual. We do caution against, and I don't include it in this presentation, getting in and changing things. It's one of our real frustrations where I've got one coming in next week, in fact, where the victim survivor has gone out to multiple IT people who have gone in and they've done their best and they've changed things, and that deletes evidence. I had one from, it was literally 50 k's down the road about 18 months ago. It was a horrific case, a lot of money involved, where the victim survivors have been advised to take it to a phone repair shop who specialised in DV recovery. They had factory reset the phone, they erased her cloud accounts, they put new cloud accounts in there, and she then handed it to us for forensics, hoping it would apply for her court case. And there was enough deleted data on there for us to have a pretty good idea of what he was doing. It was a mobile device manager. He had the means and ability to do that. But there was nothing of it we could stand up in court and basically advocate for her. There was no way I could make that stick. So she wound up losing that court case. It would have cost her millions. So we don't recommend making changes. If you've got any questions, feel free, give us a call. We're more than happy to walk someone through that. But to answer your question, it is a government decision, and we need the government to stand up in each state. Sorry, you're going to get there eventually.
Hi. Actually, I know a case that is considered a DV. I know a case that happened, that he mentioned that the DV doesn't consider as an offense, but actually in Queensland they consider that.
Sorry, I missed most of that.
You missed?
Yeah. Sorry, the sound is dropping in and out.
No, what I'm saying, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
What I'm saying that I know a case that is exactly the same as you can showed about Sarah up there. And in Queensland, it's considered as a DV a case.
Yep.
And in police get involved with everything, can go to court, everything.
Yep. We have great relationship with the police, and they are taking this a lot more seriously. What we find is that we'll do a report for a victim survivor, that will go to police. The police will then call us to basically go through it and make sure they actually understand what on earth we're talking about and go from there. I'm not sure about Queensland in terms of their new legislation around coercive control, But in terms of New South Wales, their coercive control legislation has been up for 12 months. There's been 3 charges laid in that 12 months. One was dropped. I don't know the reason why. One was pleaded not guilty. That is currently going before the courts. And the third guy pleaded guilty, and that was us. I actually did that safety audit with her and was very happy to nail him. So he's having a bad day.
So you were saying that for people who are in tech, that we shouldn't get involved in touching these phones or devices or whatever. Are there any volunteer places that we could go to be able to assist, to learn how to do some of that well for survivors and assist in volunteering? Because it sounds like the government isn't doing it because there's not enough people to do it, but also that it's needed. And if people like us can volunteer to help, how do we go about doing that?
Reach out to me after this. I'll grab these contact details. We have one person who's an IT security professional down in Melbourne. Once we've met with the victim survivor and deemed it safe, we will get him to go in and look at the physical side of things where it's appropriate. I've got one of those actually going through now where he's got a whole home network. The victim survivor doesn't know how to unplug it, so he'll go to her house and unplug it. But we have to meet with her first, understand what the risk level is to him, both from a physical threat but also from a trauma perspective, because he's not a trained counsellor. I spent 10 years at Lifeline between CIO jobs, and also in terms of we don't want that victim survivor basically latching onto him as the solution to everything. But please reach out. Volunteers are great. The second aspect around where you are going is taking a more coordinated approach at a national level. I can't tell you that about what that's about, but that is happening. It's under embargo at the moment, but it will happen. It should be announced, hopefully, June, July this year. Fingers crossed. It may take a little longer, but there's something very big happening in this space.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have, so could you please give it up for Andrew?
Yep. Thank you.